these stained glass biscuits, I'm starting off with a large mixing bowl and I'm going to add 100 grams of caster sugar and 175 grams of butter at room temperature. Mix the sugar and the butter until you get a nice creamy texture, and then you can go ahead and add the flour. So it's 225 grams of plain flour. This is an optional extra, but you can add a tablespoon of mixed spice. This just gives it that little bit of flavour. If you rather your biscuits plain, then don't add this bit. Mix everything together until it starts to form a dough, and then you can go ahead and add 2 cupfuls of vanilla essence. Carry on mixing this through with the wooden spoon, but then you're going to need to get your hand in there and form a nice dough. I'm not a huge fan of getting my hands in. I am someone who puts away stuff once I've finished baking with it. So if I've just finished with the flour, I usually just put the flour away if I don't need it again. And I just don't like messy cooking and lots of washing up. Gather as much as you can from around the bowl and just roll it in a ball in the bowl itself until it's ready to be rolled out, and then you're going to sprinkle some of your flour onto the worktop and roll your dough out to 5mm thick. So here, I don't know if you've seen this rolling pin before, I've used it in my clay bookmark video, but the rings on the end have different depths to help you roll out your dough or your pastry nice and evenly. So this is set to 5mm thick. They're really useful. I'll link it. Then you'll need your cookie cutter, and this one's in the shape of a light bulb. I thought this would look really pretty with the stained glass effect from the boiled sweets, but you could do a star, snowflakes, Christmas trees, anything that you wanted to really. Stamp out as many as you can from this one piece of dough. Obviously we can re-roll it and create some more shapes after. Then you want to transport your cut out pieces onto your baking tray. I find that using a spatula is quite good for this, and if you flour the edge of the spatula, it stops the distortion of the dough too much. If you wanted to, you could always put your dough in the fridge to chill for about 30 minutes before you roll it out and cut it out. That can help the cookies keep their shape, but I wasn't too worried. They do keep their shape pretty well anyway. Just putting them in the fridge helps. When you have all of your biscuits on the tray, you then want to cut out a small section. This is where your sweets are going to go to create the glass effect. You can either cut it with a knife like I am, because I haven't got a smaller cutter, or if you've got a cookie cutter in several sizes of the same shape, then you could use that to create a nice neat edge. But you want to make sure that you leave a border of not pastry, of dough of about 1 centimetre wide. You can always neaten up the edges as you go along just by using your finger to just mould it back into place, or use your knife to mould it back into place so you get smoother edges rather than jagged bits from where you've cut. Get your bag of boiled sweets. I've got some sherbet ones here, so they've got a bit of a tang, and you're going to crush them up with your rolling pin. Just crush them up as small as you can whilst they're still in their individual wrappers. Please be careful as you do this. My sweets wanted to fly everywhere, so I ended up trying to hold them and trying to avoid bang in my fingers. Now you can sprinkle your crushed sweets into the centre of your biscuits where you've cut away, and just make sure you do a nice thin layer on top of the baking sheet. You can do it thicker, but then that also poses the risk of your sweets overflowing and your biscuits looking messy. Place your baking tray into a preheated oven at 180 degrees Celsius for between 12 and 15 minutes, just until they start to brown. When they're finished in the oven, place them on a cooling rack to cool down. They should have a really cool stained glass window effect when you hold them up to the light when they're cool to touch. Next step is optional, but I'm just placing them onto a plate so I can decorate them a little bit more. As they are light bulbs, I'm going to add a little bit of icing on the top, like you get on a normal light bulb, the bit where it screws into the light fitting. So I'm going to get a black icing tube. You can get these in most supermarkets, and annoyingly, not very often can you buy them on their own. They usually come in packs, so this one came in a pack of 4 with some others, but I really only wanted the black so I could create the little screw section on light bulbs. So I'm just going to pipe these onto the top. To create the screw part of the light bulb, I just used the black icing to do 3 ellipses at an angle, and it looks like a little screw thread. For other shapes you don't have to do this part, I just thought it would be a finishing touch for light bulbs. And another option is to actually cut out a hole before you put it into bake, and then you can thread them onto some string or thread some ribbon through them so they can be hung on a Christmas tree. To present your biscuits in, I like to use a brown bag and turn them into Rudolph. So for this you need, like I say, a brown bag, 2 googly eyes, a red pom-pom, and 2 small candy canes. Just use double-sided tape to stick on your googly eyes if you aren't lucky enough, like me, to have the self-stick googly eyes. And the double-sided tape is also good for sticking on the pom-pom of the nose. You could also use hot glue if you wanted to stick the eyes, the nose and the candy canes to the bag. Because the candy canes are heavier, you'll either need to use hot glue like I said earlier on, or use sellotape to secure them in place, but attach them to the inside of the brown bag and just make sure that the hook part faces outwards, and you'll see what I mean from the visuals that you can see in front of you. You'll need more than 1 piece of sellotape to hold it into place. I've done it with 1 piece of sellotape before and it just flops around everywhere, so maybe do 2 or 3 strips across the candy cane to hold it in place. This is just a nice little extra for your recipient to have, so they can have their biscuits, and then to finish off they can have a candy cane too. Now all that's left to do is to add your biscuits. You could either wrap them up in some paper towel, or a way to preserve them a little bit longer, for 2 to 3 days they'll last for, is in these cellophane bags. I think it was a pack of 50 off Amazon, but they fit about 4 or 5 of these biscuits in, and they're really good for sealing and keeping fresh. Just pop them into the brown Rudolph bag and they're ready to give as a gift. Like I say, they last 2 to 3 days and they are a perfect last minute gift. Most of these things you have in your cupboard and you don't need to have the icing and you don't need to present them in a posh bag. You can just put them in a nice little box and they still taste good. If you enjoyed this video, please check out my channel, click subscribe if you like what you see,